Good evening. Today is Thursday, March 26, 2026. I'd like to call this meeting of the Auburn City Council to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Clarko is excused this evening. Councilor Diego.
Here.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson.
Here.
Councilor Cuddy.
Here.
Mayor Janicki.
Here, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent prayer or reflection. Thank you. Please be seated. Public announcements.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one announcement to remind everybody that next week is Easter week. Easter's April 4th, and trash pickup in the city of Auburn next week will be one day early for the whole city. So if you're usually a Tuesday pickup day, you'll be picked up on Monday, March 30th. Wednesday, Tuesday, March 31st, Thursday, Wednesday, April 1st, and Friday, Thursday, April 2nd. Also, no leaf pickup, yard waste pickup on the Monday, March 30th. This has been posted to the city website and email and social media, and we'll be spreading the word all weekend to try to remind people if people can share the news. It'll help our refuse collection crews on Mondays. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. This evening we have our annual Vietnam Veterans Welcome Home Day proclamation.
Proclamation from the office of Mayor Genatino. Whereas America is a symbol of freedom and has achieved its stature in the world because of the selfless service of our brave veterans. And whereas from those who initially fought in the Revolutionary War to those that serve today, the fearless members of our country armed forces have given up the comforts of home, the company of loved ones, and for some have paid the ultimate sacrifice so that we could live free in our land of liberty. And whereas from the 1950s through the 1970s, millions of Americans served in support of the U.S. military operations in Vietnam, with more than 58,000 giving their lives and more than 300,000 wounded during their service. Whereas our Vietnam veterans fought for freedom, kept America safe, and dedicated their lives to this nation. And whereas we are forever thankful for their unwavering strength and courage while fighting in the Vietnam War. And whereas on March 29th of this year, we join together to express our gratitude, remember their service, and say welcome home to these brave men and women. We honor the immeasurable sacrifices and contributions our Vietnam War veterans have made to protect the life, liberty, and happiness of every American. And whereas the people of the United States shall always remember the heroism and courage of those who have served and those who continue to serve, thanks to the enduring valor of our Vietnam veterans. Now therefore, James Genatino Jr., Mayor of the City of Auburn, on behalf of the members of the City Council and people of Auburn, does hereby proclaim that March 29, 2026 will be known as Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day here in the City of Auburn.
Thank you. With us this evening we have Mr. Dale Bush and former Mayor Mike Quill, both of whom are Marine Corps veterans of Vietnam. Gentlemen, if you could meet me at the railing, please.
So, I thank you again every year for this proclamation. It means a lot to us veterans of the Vietnam War. Recognition just was never there when we came home like it is today, and I'm thankful that it isn't that way, that now we're congratulating our people. But along with it, I get a lot of thank yous now when I wear my hat or my jacket, which never happened until maybe 10 years ago. So again, I thank you very much.
It's great to be on this side of the rail. We have a slide projection that'll last probably hour and a half, and pay them back all my fellow employees. In all seriousness, thank you for this. It's all day long I've been trying to think of what I wanted to say about Vietnam and being there and coming home, and what my life would have been if I hadn't done it. God only knows I couldn't have done much better, but thank you, and thanks for thinking of us, and always keep the veterans in mind, no matter where they were, what they did. You're here because they were there. Thank you.
Thank you both, and welcome home. Public to be heard.
At this point in time, we'll open public to be heard portion of the council meeting. Residents are asked to state their name and address for the record. Please keep remarks to 3 minutes or less. Please observe commonly accepted rules of courtesy and decorum.
Very good. Is there anybody wishing to be heard? Mr. Price?
Hello, my name is Taylor Price. I live at 74 Mary Street in Auburn, New York. I'm here just because it was recently brought to my attention that Auburn, or the Auburn Police Department, has some sort of a contractual relationship with the Flock Safety Camera Surveillance Corporation. I don't know how many people here are aware of what Flock Safety is, but I would recommend everyone go to dflock.org, DEFLOCK.org, to learn more about it. Basically, there are license plate readers that track everyone's movements, associations and routines, stores them in a database, so that they can be called upon later. I'm just here to express my concern as a citizen and a taxpayer that these are constitutional issues that are being violated, that there hasn't been any transparency as far as, I'm just becoming aware of this myself. So I would like to know more about it. I would like to know why I haven't known anything about this before. This is an issue that impacts everyone. We're talking about AI technology that can track your car, can recognize dents, bumper stickers, tracks you everywhere you go, and keeps a receipt of it forever, or as long as they want. And it's all run by a private company that is not beholden to you in any way. So that's the kind of, I'm just here to raise, to let you know, obviously I'm concerned about something like this, and there's a lot of questions that need to be asked and answered if we're going to even entertain this notion, and the fact that we might already be in a relationship with this company without there having been basically any transparency or communication with the community, I think is really not good and reflects poorly on us as a community. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Is there anybody else wishing to be heard this evening? Ms. Okazik? Ladies before gentlemen, Mr. Lattimore.
Thank you, Mayor.
My name is Pam Okosik. I live on the west end of Chapman Ave. On Tuesday, March 17th, 2026 of this year, there was a detailed story in the Citizen newspaper from a concerned mother talking about the way the city school district handles bullying after her son was injured the prior week by a child that she's been warning officials about for over 2 years. Her son has had to endure threats, slaps, being beaten on and bit while walking home. The mother has arranged for bus transportation to try to keep her child safe. She has also kept him out of school for weeks at a time because the school district refuses her request to move her son's attacker to another class. Please explain why this child who continues to be harassed and attacked is the one that must be shuffled around and miss school because another student can't behave. Also keep in mind another student has also been attacked trying to defend this student by having hand sanitizer thrown in his face and his eyes by the same offending student. Superintendent Dr. Misty Slavic states individual students' disciplinary actions cannot be discussed. Well, here's the fact. This is not just a simple case of bullying. Let's set the record straight. This 10-year-old little individual committed a premeditated, horrible assault on another little boy. The boy has sent threats of, quote, "I'm going to kill you." He also told classmates he intended to assault the little boy before these attacks occurred. All of this should not be taken lightly. If he was an adult, he would have been charged and sentenced for this crime. The little boy that was assaulted was sent from Auburn Memorial Hospital to Syracuse Golisanos Children's Hospital due to the extent of his injuries of the spinal attack. Fact, the attacker had other boys hold this little one down while he continued to repeatedly kick him in the face and head, while that poor boy could not shield his head or his face against those said kicks. The doctor said that the injuries were so severe and were within an inch of fracturing this child's skull. We shouldn't
You have 30
have,
seconds, Ms. Okazek.
we shouldn't have to worry about sending our children to a school that's not safe. And if the school will not protect our children, we as a city or the police should take care of our children. Because I say, so far, the way the schools handled this, they haven't. So you know what? Shame on the school district, and shame on us for not protecting this poor child.
Thank you, Ms. Okazek. Is there anybody else wishing to be heard this evening? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Lattimore, she's deferring to you. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Tim Lattimore, 63 South Street. Glad to be with you tonight. I know it's budget time, and it's nice to see the mayor here and Mayor Cousin. Anyways.
Yeah, the other Italian, Genentino.
Well, good to see you. In previous budgets, there was supposedly money, I think it was in Mayor Quill's time, that we had money to repair the building, this building. One of the great architects out of Boston designed it, and hopefully we can maintain it. I know that in the budget there's some money, but hopefully there's enough to fix it up, and I know it's been a while since she's had a little face cleaning, so hopefully we got that. And welcome back, Vietnam, guys. Thanks.
Is there anybody else wishing to be heard this evening? Mr. Rudolph?
James Udall, 106 Osborne Street. I think everybody should want to address the 700-pound gorilla in the room, which is the budget deficit and the pending tax increase. I've been here advocating for a discount to the senior and disabled homeowners, the increase to their to the income limits for this tax assessment discount program that they should qualify for. But you know, with the tax situation or with the budget situation being what it is, it's really not realistic that that they're going to get any tax relief this year. But more importantly, the budget doesn't get to where it's at right now based on one bad decision or one missed opportunity. This is years and years of decisions and opportunities missed that are compounding now to create the potential tax increase on the rest of us that's going to happen. I've been coming here for about 3 months, almost every week, and what I've just learned in the last 3 months is the waste that takes place. We pay the county's postage to mail out their bills, even though we backstop the county's property taxes. We are eating $100 grand or so on school crossing guards, even though we backstop the school. We backstop the school's property taxes. There was a contractor in here begging for 60 grand in the beginning of January because he couldn't complete a project on time. And then the ambulance. I mean, the city's pet project a few years ago. I was here the night that Digert said that the ambulance wasn't going to cost the city a dime, and my understanding is that it's still in the red. So there's all of this adds. It's not just the postage, it's not just the school tax, it's not the crossing guards, it's not the ambulance by itself. It's all of it added up, 1 by 2 by 3 by 4 by 5, all of it. And this is where you end up with this budget situation that it is where we are. So I just, I'm going to quote you, Mayor Giannatino. A couple months ago, you may not remember it, but you said right there that many entities and people treat the city of Auburn like a punching bag. And it's because this council allows itself.
30 seconds.
The council allows itself to be used as a punching bag. If you want to get the budget right, everybody has to come together and decide that it wants to stand up for Auburn and maybe not be the nicest guy in the room. The nicest guy in the room doesn't get the job done all of the time. And the city needs to stop acting like a punching bag, and then it will stop being treated like a punching bag, and then maybe the budget will get in a better situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Udall. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm going to talk fast. My name is Jenna Powers, and I'm a Cayuga County resident. I'm also a data manager for a European company, and I've spent the last 4 years working under the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, one of the strongest data privacy frameworks in the world. I see firsthand the stark contrast between how EU citizens' data is treated as their personal property and how Americans are left exposed by a federal data privacy law that hasn't been updated since 1974. What the City of Auburn has deployed with Flock safety cameras is not just a law enforcement tool, it's a mass surveillance infrastructure that tracks every driver in the city without a warrant, without consent, and without meaningful oversight. Additionally, the installation of these cameras without community knowledge or consent violated the New York State open meetings law. We were told that data is deleted after 30 days, but that's not what the current contract says. In February 2026, Flock rewrote its terms. The new contract states that it grants Flock a perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, royalty-free license to our data. This means that even if we cancel the contract tomorrow, Flock retains the right to use all the data our cameras ever collected for any purpose forever. Our local 30-day retention setting does not prevent this. That's also a default setting and can be changed at any time. They removed the clause that said Flock does not own and shall not sell customer data. The contractual prohibition on selling our residents' data is gone. We were told these are just cameras that take pictures of license plates. That's not the reality of the platform. The system includes vehicle fingerprint that tracks cars by make and color, and freeform AI that can search for people by physical description. They have a product called Raven that detects gunshots and as of last year can detect human voices in distress. Deploying audio surveillance has serious legal implications. And this is heading somewhere even more concerning. Flock's platform is built on open data connections and third-party integrations. Their terms define data to include images, video, audio, time, location, anything derived from them. Flock's architecture is designed to feed into larger systems, and the most likely destination is Palantir. Palantir's Gotham platform is already used by law enforcement and federal agencies nationwide to aggregate surveillance data into a single searchable intelligence system. Any data accessible through Flock's data connection or exported to a real-time crime center can be fed directly into Palantir's infrastructure by law enforcement intermediaries. Flock already integrates with platforms like Genetech and previously with Axon Fusus. The integration
30
ecosystem
seconds.
is expanding constantly. And the current administration is actively clearing the path for a free-for-all. Just days ago, the White House released a national policy framework for AI recommending that Congress preempt state AI laws to ensure a minimally burdensome national standard. Also, I know it's the middle of budget, and we have the opportunity to make this contract null and void because they changed their terms. And if that doesn't happen,
Ms.
you'll
Powers,
have to factor in another lawsuit for this year.
Ms. Powers, before you step away, I do need street address and municipality in which you reside for the record.
I live in Aurora, but I drive through Auburn every day.
No, we
so-
just need for the record what municipality you live in.
I'm in Aurora.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to be heard this evening? Mr. Bishop.
Good evening. My name's Andrew Bishop. I live in Auburn, New York. And as you can see, Mr. Mayor, I have my sign with me as usual. Welcome to Auburn. Don't drink the water. So before I give my real talk, I would like to maybe know if I put a FOIL request in. Did anybody in this city sign a non-disclosure agreement with Flock? I mean, they did just pop up out of nowhere. I mean, not that I'm totally against them. I mean, they did actually find that that one truck was maybe involved in an accident recently, a hit and run. But getting back to the whole point is that these are the sort of questions we all have. But Mr. Mayor, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I saw at least $80,000 in the past few years spending on testing the lake, find out what kind of pollutants were in it, but not 10 cents for stable isotope analysis. And of course, we all know if you take 2 minutes to search it, this is why nobody wants to use it, because it would point to the actual culprits. These people that are suing Auburn for millions of dollars because of the tumors they have. Remember Aaron Brockovich with the hexavalent chromium and how PG&E was poisoning those people? Do you know how they actually caught PG&E? Was because they were using biolabeling. And I want you to look at this. This is the scientific understanding of how you would turn around and take the plaque amyloids from a person's tumor to point back to where it actually came from. Because you can do what's basically, it's called biolabeling, if that's what you want to call it. So I'm just kind of curious when it comes time for the depositions for those people. I have to wonder who's going to ask the question, other than, of course, their own lawyers, why wasn't stable isotope analysis used years ago? And in reality, like I keep telling everybody, all we need to do is throw a bunch of more concrete tanks in Moravian Groton, and it would clean up most of it. But you'd have to admit there was a problem, because you can't just allocate funds without need. This is what's going to kill us, is these lawsuits.
30 seconds, Mr. Bishop.
$80,000 testing the lake for everything but the one possible thing that conclusively points to who the culprits are in the lake and in what percentages, because they all have their isotopic analysis. They have their own specific biomarkers. This is not going to go away. And it's just going to cost more. What's the next cost? We have to use reverse osmosis for our
3
drinking
minutes,
water.
Mr. Bishop. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Always a
Everyone,
pleasure.
don't drink the water.
See you next week.
Yes.
Anyone else wishing to be heard? Mr. Ganser?
Good evening. My name is Eli Gansert. I'm an Auburn resident. Also, I'm a street outreach coordinator for a program called Safe and Warm here in Auburn. We're a homeless outreach program. I'm standing here tonight asking the city for help. We've been dealing with a drug called K2 or sham, and it's like potpourri sprayed with some kind of chemicals. There is a huge influx of use in our streets in the last few months, 6 months. We've seen it a lot in the wintertime because of EOs, and we bring everybody in out of the streets. So about a year ago, 8 months ago, DSS started housing people, two men per room or 2 women per room. The last few months, I've had 2 extreme situations where I had one of my clients woke up with a man on top of him, naked, punching him in the head. So messed up on drugs, he swore there was somebody in the room, and then when my client verified there was nobody in the room, he says, no, they're in the bed. Police got called, couldn't arrest the man. They said if they had arrested him, he'd be out the same day, back in the same room anyway. The man was running around the hotel naked. We begged DSS for help. We begged domestic violence for help. We asked APD for help. I reached out to the sheriff for help. And at the end of the day, after 9 hours, I was left with no hope. Gratefully, I was able to reach out to Respite. They came through like champions through a Liberty Resource Program and housed my client for the last month. A week ago, or less, I had another client in a room. The roommate was smoking sham in the room, had a medical, I don't know his exact terms, seizure, stroke, something. He was hauled to the hospital, police came, couldn't find any drugs on the individual, but residue and all kinds of crap all over the room. Once again, could not get help from APS, domestic violence. Cuba County Sheriff's Department, APD, like I said, showed up but couldn't do anything. This is growing to be quite a epidemic within our community. We have caseworkers, case managers, people going into these hotel rooms and actually doing paperwork with clients. And I've been on the DB coalition with CAP and all the other organizations, Sheriff's Department. There wasn't one caseworker in there that actually knew what the smell of sham or K2. It's disgusting when certain
You have
clients.
30 seconds, Mr. Ganser.
We need help. We need this addressed. We're next going to go in front of the county legislation, but I'm at a loss for words. We need to protect our homeless community. We need to protect our case managers. And the hotels are still being paid using taxpayer dollars. And there's no accountability for our money being used. And they're still just letting them in there as long as they get their paycheck. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to be heard this evening? All right, we'll close the public to be heard. Move on to the approval of the meeting minutes from March 5th, 2026. Do we have a sponsor? Councilor Diego, second by Councilor Overstreet Wilson. Any questions, discussion, or changes? Please call the roll.
Councilor Diego?
Yes.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson?
Yes.
Councilor Cuddy?
Yes.
Mayor Genatine?
Aye. City Manager's report, Ms. Haynes.
Nothing for tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Very good. Reports from members of council. Just a few things. Monday afternoon, I had the opportunity to read to the 3PK class at Cuba Seneca Community Action Agency. Yesterday, I attended the ribbon cutting for the cardiac cath lab at Auburn Community Hospital. Since opening, they have performed approximately 130 procedures. Their goal for the whole year was 100. They've only been open a few months. Just want to congratulate the team in the cath lab for the good work they're doing and acknowledge and thank the Wayne family who made the initial $1 million donation for that project. And last night, Councilors Diego, Clarko, and myself attended the annual Auburn Fire Department annual ceremony honoring their deceased members. The ceremony is always well done. I want to acknowledge the chief and the entire department for continuing on that tradition. We have 3 presentations this evening. We'll start with our 2026-2027 annual road improvement program. Mr. Scott McIntyre from engineering. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me here tonight. Here to talk about the 2026 Auburn Road Program. The goal of the road program is to keep and maintain roads in good and fair condition. We try to do this as cost effectively and efficient as possible. In that we can either do, our treatments for the roads, or we have maintenance efforts, we have repair efforts, and then not listed there are reconstruction. We don't do a lot of reconstruction, but mainly maintenance, which would be microsurfacing, milling and topping roads, and also reconstruction. I like to think of them as like the factor of 10. So if it takes $10,000 to microsurface a road, it'll be about $100,000 to resurface the road and about $1 million to, excuse me, to reconstruct the same section of road. We do crack sealing. A lot of times we do this before microsurfacing. The goal of this is just to keep water out of the lower layers of the asphalt sections. And then the micro-paving or microsurfacing process, that is an asphalt sealer. Again, this is trying to maintain the surface of the road and keep water away from lower sections of the road, which causes the potholes. And then a repair process, this is a typical mill and pave operation. Every year we do a road evaluation. This one is from 2025. One thing we're planning on changing this year is to do a spring evaluation. I think everybody's sort of seen that roads have been falling apart because of the last few winters. We've had very severe winters that have affected the roads quite a bit. Again, you'll see these are, through our road evaluation, we rank them all in good, fair, failed, or poor condition. Looking at this chart, you'll see there's a lot of good and fair streets, which a lot of residents might say that that's exactly wrong. There's a lot of potholes. We'll find a lot more deterioration of the road than this is actually showing with our spring evaluation that we're doing right now. Every year, well, thank you. Every year we attempt to make small changes to the road program. This is a trend graph. Probably would be better as a line graph, but you can see that in the good streets, they started improving and then they started going down a little bit. The fair streets, which are the lighter green, we made an impact on them and then they're continuing to increase. Poor streets, the yellow, they're decreasing, but then in the last couple of years they've started to increase a little bit. And then fair streets, we've been making a pretty good impact on, or failed streets, we've been making a pretty good impact on them, the red ones. I like to think that in 2015 we introduced microsurfacing. That really concentrated initially on the fair streets. So we made, it doesn't go all the way back to 15, but we made a very heavy impact on the fair streets, the lighter green. And then we continued to do the same process with our resurfacing programs. But we have since then decreased the money that we've been spending on microsurfacing and maintenance of roads. I think that's why we're seeing an increase of fair streets and a decrease of good streets. Also, we have had, since about 2021, we've been getting more money for touring route money, which has mainly been going towards our resurfacing programs. Here are the finances. Mainly, we get all of our funding from the New York State DOT. In 2015, the total of the CHIPS program, the Pave New York program, emergency winter recovery, pave our potholes, and state touring routes funding was only $683,000 about. Since then, they introduced other programs. Pave our potholes was introduced in 2023. State touring routes was introduced in 2021. And those funds have now contributed, now we're up to about $3.5 million a year for state funding. This has been integral in fixing our streets. It also has made it so that we do not ask for bonding at all anymore for the road program. Back 2020, I think, was the last year that we actually did some bonding. Might have been 2021. But we used to bond for about $1 to $2 million a year for the road program, which, because of the state funding, we don't need to anymore. This is how we plan on fixing the streets this year. This is how we're allocating the money. First thing we do is we put the road program out to bid. We're aiming for a $1.7 million program this year. If we have favorable bid results, we might come in lower, and we will add alternate streets to the list and try and pave as much as we can with the amount of money that is put in the bid. Also, if the state touring, or if the state funding, the CHIPS programs, we don't really know, I'll go back a slide here. We don't really know exactly what the allocations will be for 26, 27 until the state budget is passed. So really, right now we're expecting it to be the same. We've talked to some of the DOT staff, and they're expecting it to be the same, but you never really know until the state budget's passed. So we could have the same amount, we could have more, we could have less, but this is based off of having the same amount of funding as last year. Like I said, we start with the road resurfacing at 1.7 million. We are trying to increase our microsurfacing program a little bit because, like I showed in the one trend graph, I think we're failing a little bit in maintaining streets in good and fair condition. We want to continue maintaining streets in better condition so they have longer lifespan in the future. We're also doing crack sealing, county bid work. Usually that's a supplement to the microsurfacing, doing patching for the microsurfacing streets. And then manholes and catch basins, we have to buy iron usually every year that need to be replaced on the streets we're working on. And then the city sidewalk program, we put this into effect a few years ago. We're doing the city sidewalk program as a separate bid these days, and that is in preparation for the road program. We found that the concrete contractors do a better job of getting the curbing and sidewalk done at a cheaper price than when we're bidding out a road program. It ends up coming at a premium. New this year also, last year we did force account labor as part of the budget for the road program, or for the city staff that is involved with this. We allocated $75,000 as reimbursements from CHIPS. This year we're increasing that to $125,000 as a reimbursement to CHIPS for our staff time to facilitate this program. In 2020, we ended up doing a quadrant-based road program. So this year we're in the northeast quadrant, 2026. Next year we'll be in the northwest quadrant, then the southeast quadrant at southwest, and then we'll continue doing that circulation. We're in 1.5 phases through. This has been valuable to our utility contractors. So what we've been doing is trying to have NYSEG or other contractors stay a year ahead of our road program. So when we do the resurfacing, a lot of times those utilities are already done. In the past, we've had issues with utilities coming in right after we repave a road. Not saying that that still doesn't happen sometimes, but this is our attempt to try and stop that as much as possible. Since we are in the northeast quadrant, this is the list of streets that we plan on paving this year with the $1.7 million or $1.7 million of CHIPS funding. You'll see Lake Ave, that one is not in the northeast quadrant, but we've discussed that as a essential route that needs to be fixed. So the plan this year is we have $438,000 remaining from last year's road program. What the plan is for them to use that remaining funding is to pave Van Anden Street between Cross and Washington. That street has gone through a lot of utility work over the years. We've been sort of waiting around for a sewer program to go through and do sewer separation, but that might not happen right away. So we think it's good to pave that street, get that done, because those residents have been dealing with a bad road for a very long time. And then also Lake Ave, the section between Osborne Street and Swift, that'll also be performed with last year's road program. We want to get a good jump start on that, so they're substantially complete before the bridge gets started to work on the Lake Ave Bridge there. Sumner Street, Capitol Street, Paul Street, they're smaller streets, but we have to continue to fix all the streets in the city. So it's important to make sure that we pay attention to some of even the smaller local streets. And then Standard Ave and Seymour, we've seen a lot of delamination on those streets. And with the arterial program coming through next year, they're going to be bidding out the arterial, DOT is going to be bidding out the arterial project in another month or two. Substantial work will be done in 2027, but Standard Ave and Seymour are big cut-throughs for avoiding that kind of work. It's not in the official detour plan for the DOT, but we feel like it's worth investing some money in those streets just to help out for people that are going to avoid the arterial work in the next year or two. And then there's a list of alternate streets that, if there's more money, we'll pave more streets. So that's why they're up there also. And we don't, I only have the resurfacing list up here. We are working currently on a microsurface and crack seal list. Because we're concentrating in the northeast quadrant for asphalt resurfacing, we will be also concentrating in the other 3 quadrants with microsurface and crack seal. To touch base on future and current projects, right now we have locally administered federal aid projects of Burgess Street culvert replacement. They are currently in construction, or they're on a winter shutdown right now. They will be coming back to work probably the middle of April, is what we've discussed. We don't know exactly a date, but I will make sure that everybody is informed when we start that project back up. They have a final end section to do on the culvert, and then a lot of restoration to do. Like at Bridge rehabilitation, we've got approval to award the project to the contractor actually today from the DOT. So we will be working on getting those contracts signed and getting that contractor started on that project. Really is at Bridge. It looks like probably a 2028 construction project. That project is also funded through Bridge New York and the state STIP program. And then Brookside Drive culvert replacement, it was awarded to us by the state, but we haven't gone to design yet. We haven't got approval to go out to design yet. So we don't really know exactly when construction would start on that. Brookside Drive culvert, that starts at Prospect Street, goes past KFC, and it goes down to the arterial, or down to Grand Ave there. Current DOT projects on their STIP program is arterial east and west and North Street traffic signal improvements. So they're planning on bidding out the arterial east and west from 326 Veterans Memorial Parkway to Standard Ave in June. And then it would probably be awarded in August or September. A bulk of their construction for that project will be in 2027. They do plan on doing patching and utility work this fall and winter. North Street is also getting a signal improvement traffic signals improved on that. They're going to replace the one at Standard Ave, and they're going to be adding MyoVision to those signals. They also have arterial east and west. That would be Grand Ave. So they're starting at Standard Ave and going out to the city line. They're starting that. Grand Ave, yeah, sorry, I put an extra one in there. Grand Ave, they have it on their STIP program right now. They are planning on going from Standard Ave past the East City line. They're planning on doing a mill and fill. They were out there this year doing scoping for it and asphalt cores. That project is slated for 2028 based off of their STIP program. And then North Street reconstruction, which they actually did some scoping this year. They're looking at right away in 2027 and then doing the construction in 2030. Any questions? I know I sort of flew through that a little bit, but.
This question is probably more for the mayor it's me asking for an update and probably the manager. Mayor, I went back and I watched the State of the City address that you gave at the beginning of the year, and you specifically talked about AIM funding and how different municipalities across the state were awarded funding for infrastructure and other services, but the funding had been stagnant and it hadn't gone up. And had it gone up, we would have more money for such projects as this, and maybe the AIM funding that we are receiving, it is encompassing some of these things. You also said that we were applying pressure to our local representatives. Do you have an update? And I know the state budget hasn't been passed. Do you have an update on if that pressure is working? Are there conversations about the increase in AIM funding, or any of those things that you can share?
AIM funding is separate from this. We wouldn't use AIM funding on road program money. This is the one bright spot in state budget in the last few years, as Mr. McIntyre alluded to. We're getting millions of dollars more than we have in the past for roads. I'm actually going to talk about AIM funding later, if we can wait for that. Is that good?
Right, I'll wait for that, yeah.
Any other questions on road program?
Hey, Scott.
Yes.
See, you were talking about you break it down into quadrants. Are we actually going to start with the failed and poor streets first in that quadrant?
Yep. We always concentrate on the failed streets. A lot of the resurfacing is all failed streets. Then we do some fair and poor streets with microsurfacing. A lot of the times the poor streets get sort of stuck in a limbo because they're beyond repair for micro, and they're not quite qualifying for a full resurfacing. So a lot of times we'll do patching or something like that on those type of streets. Yes, we would be concentrating on those.
Okay. I see that there's going to be like $1.1 million left over compared to what we're budgeting and what we may get. What are we going to use that money for? Would that be more roads paved, or are we going to shift that towards the bridge project, or any plans for that extra money?
Yep. At this moment, we don't really know exactly what the state budget is and what we're going to actually get allocated. We would love to pave some more roads. There are other projects that qualify for the CHIPS funding, and I think at this point, it's been sort of proposed that there's some work to be done at the DPW and some other things. I think we'll probably touch base more on that with the CIP program, and I will come back once we end up getting the actual numbers from the state. I'll come back and I can do another presentation on all the details of what we're actually trying to propose for spending this CHIPS funding.
And what, out of those funding sources we get, is that POP? Is that the only one that we can use towards filling potholes?
It's funny you ask. Pave our potholes is it sounds like we should be able to pave potholes, but we can't. Unfortunately, the qualifying thing for our CHIPS funding is that it has to have a 10-year lifespan. So potholes does not qualify for any of these programs. I know it's misleading for sure.
So where's the money come from to take care of that? Obviously, there's a ridiculous amount of potholes in the city right now.
Typically, that comes out of the street department's budget.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. McIntyre?
I have one. In the quadrant that you put up, you talked specifically about like those side streets that are going to be paved. What assessment was used to determine what streets were the worst that needed to be paved? Like you talked specifically about Vanandon Street, and there has been a lot of work done, utility work done on Vanandon Street, and it is in need of repair, but what other, again, how are you assessing what other streets might need to be paved as well?
Yeah, every year we do an assessment. This year we're doing it, usually we do it in the fall, because that's where we find the time to be able to really assess it. And we try to put a 4 to 5 year program together. So we're sort of forecasting where we're at.
Does this involve you like driving around?
Yep, we drive every street, and we mark potholes, utility issues, road surface. We rank them from good, fair, poor, and failed. And this year we've changed it a little bit, but Van Annen's been on our list for a number of years because, well, like I said, it would have been paved a long time ago if it wasn't for us sort of holding back because of a possible project for sewer separation on that street.
Mr. McIntyre, do we have a list of streets that need large patching done?
We are doing the road evaluation as we speak. Like we're out there on the road driving the streets now. We will have a list of patching that, and typically every year we do give them a list of the DPW a list of patches that need to be done. But this year we're going to try better to make sure that it's more encompassing of everything.
Okay. I know the cold patch crews are out now. Those are temporary fixes. You know, you get a day that's 65 and everybody's wondering why we're not out there reconstructing roads. When do the blacktop plants actually open?
It's usually about the last week in April.
Okay.
So we still have three to 4 weeks probably.
And you touched on the state budget. We can't officially plan for anything until that budget is passed. It's supposed to be passed by April 1st. The last couple state budgets have been late, which has pushed our road work off. Hopefully we don't experience that again this year. In regards to the arterial, I know it's a 2-year project. I know they're going to come in and do a lot of utility work this year, but there are sections that are failing that I don't know how they're going to go through another winter. Is there any plan by the state to come in and do temporary fixes until they can get here to finish the rest in 2027?
They will be doing temporary fixes, is what I've been told. But that won't be until they have a contractor on board, so it won't be till end of the summer to do any temporary patching. So that it would sort of lie with the city to fill the major potholes and do a little bit of that work.
And I know that in the meetings I've been involved in with state DOT, we've been very clear to them that this is a great project, we're appreciative of it, but failure to start on the west end of town and move east would be a really bad decision. Is that something we continue to stress to them, that we should be starting on the west end because that's the section that is the worst?
Yep. We've mentioned it. Chuck has definitely mentioned it a bunch of times also. I think they know that. What will really be the time will be after construction, after they have a meeting with the first pre-construction meeting. I don't think you can actually tell the contractor how to do their job. Usually, like Ways and Means is a slippery slope. But we've made a point that that's what we are expecting.
Okay. My last question isn't one that you have to answer, but what's the over/under that North Street gets done by 2030?
Yeah.
You don't have to answer.
I'm not expecting
it for me.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you. Great job as always. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have our 2026 to 2030 capital improvement presentation and quarterly grants update. Ms. Selvik, welcome.
All right, great. Thanks, Scott. Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I am Christina Selvik, Director of Capital Projects for the City of Auburn. Thank you for the opportunity to present our fiscal year 26 through 30 draft capital improvement plan. So often I get the question, what is a capital improvement plan and why does the city need one? So capital improvement plans serve several purposes, and throughout the year, they're regularly actually referenced by our city's financial office, our comptroller's office, our fiscal advisors, our auditors, and annually our Moody's rating for our annual credit review. The city's planning process starts with a needs assessment, and this is done at the department level. So each December, departments are provided a capital project request form looking for information about their existing capital assets. They submit the forms to my office, and those are reviewed between myself and the comptroller. A summary of projects is prepared and then reviewed by the city manager, and ultimately the draft CIP is prepared and presented to council for review and comment. In regards to funding, the city's capital plan seeks to prioritize large capital expenditures. Generally, these are over $25,000 apiece. It is common that a city capital project may include funding from several different streams. These include our bans and our bonds, grants, operating funds, and other funding, which could include lease purchase agreements for large equipment and fleet vehicles. Together, between the needs assessment and capital funding, this helps to maintain our city infrastructure, where we're able to provide high-quality services, programs, and infrastructure within our community. So what qualifies as a capital project? In January, City Council established a capital asset policy for the city. This was done in accordance with GASB 34, as well as our OSC capital asset guidelines. New York State OSC defines capital projects as an undertaking to acquire, develop, improve, or maintain various facilities, infrastructure, or other equipment. The city's current inventory of capital assets is rather large and diverse. A few examples of capital projects include our city's highway system, which has over 194 lane miles, the city's 14 municipal public structures, the city's water and sewer assets, which include our 2 plants, pumping stations, CSO facilities, dams, and municipal hydro facilities, the city's over 180 motor vehicle and equipment fleet, and the city's most utilized capital asset, our park system. The city DPW maintains over 23 city parks and nearly 109 acres of parkland. So understanding the CIP, it really consists of 2 major sections. We have the plan introduction and the funding consideration, and then the projects. To provide continuity for each project, there is a section on the project's location, an overall project description, the project justification, which includes options for funding, and the project's estimated cost for over a 5-year projection. This approach is applied across the board to each of our complex projects, whether it is the biosolids, DPW highway garage, or procurement of our fleet vehicles. Before going into this year's funding needs, I did want to take a minute just to review the significant progress that the city departments have made on capital projects this past year. The mayor and city manager already touched on many of these during the State of the City address this week, and city engineering also just covered transportation projects. Thank you, Scott. At times, it's the smaller capital projects, though, that make a difference in our day-to-day spaces for our employees and in how we are able to serve the community. So under the general fund, I did just want to point out that this past year we were able to complete the building improvements at the APD. This included improvements to their cell block, detective bureau, and window improvement replacement for just a little over $400,000. And then both in the general fund and sewer fund, the city moved forward with capital vehicle leases. This was to improve our city fleet. And then the city water department staff was able to complete and finalize the rapid sand filter building, replacement of the filter media, and then also upgrades to the HVAC. So the 5-year capital plan at a high level outlines the needs within our 5 major funds. For the upcoming fiscal year 26, there's a total of 20 projects that we're going to be able to prioritize. My office this year received a record number of requests. Over 48 requests were submitted from departments, including 1 request from New York State to renew our city courts expansion project. The priority projects are listed here. APD is currently at the end of their 5-year lease for their body-worn cameras and taser equipment. So a lease renewal will need to be considered this fiscal year. The city has 2 CREST grants out with Senator May's office, and those are for vehicle replacements. Both of those projects will be moving forward this year. The large project that I do want to highlight is the requests for HVAC replacement. So HVAC replacement was received from many city departments this year. This included Auburn Police Department, Auburn City Ambulance, Engineering, all of City Hall. The geothermal systems are basically at the end of their useful life and require replacement. Each geothermal air vent is roughly about $10,000 to replace, and you can see them actually throughout City Council chambers. And then the pumps that run the system are probably about $150,000 as well. So these units have a recent history of causing fires, leaking into offices and damaging them, and in many cases are non-operational. Engineering has informed me that it's tough to find replacement parts at this time and are recommending a system-wide replacement. To do this probably would be around $2 million. So here's the summary of the proposed general fund capital requests for this fiscal year. So at this time, in terms of bans and bonds, City Council has already passed bond ordinance number 1 of this year for the Lake Avenue Bridge, and that's already shown there. In terms of the second bond ordinance, staff is looking at replacing the stair treads, which is a required project from, I can't remember if it was PESH or OSHA on one of our reviews, and then addressing the entire HVAC system for these 2 buildings. This would bring our band total authorization for this fiscal year just shy of $5.1 million, or a little over $5.1 million. So together with DOT, federal and state grants, the lease agreements for equipment and vehicles, the general fund capital total is around $19.4 million. So CHIPS, we just talked about, and Councilor Diego had just asked, what are we doing with the rest of the money? So on there, DPW Highway Garage, because they're responsible for the maintenance of our highway system, they're eligible for CHIPS reimbursement. So they currently have a leaky roof and over the maintenance section of the garage, and then there's need to enclose a steel I-beam structure that is out in the rear portion of the property for equipment storage. So we'd like to move ahead with those 2 projects in the capital plan. And then there's always need for fleet vehicle replacement within that department as well. And then that gets you coupled with last year's Lake Ave amount to where we're roughly at for CHIPS funding for each year. I did want to talk about leases for a second. So we just talked about the APD body-worn camera funding, but for city courts expansion. So the city has been asked by Office of Courts Administration to renew this project and potentially expedite this. So as the public knows, the city currently leases space from Cayuga County for our court space. So we would have to complete this in cooperation with the county. So the lease agreement could be paid out, over a 20-year bond period, but because the city doesn't own the building, we're not able to issue debt for that project. Any questions on the general fund infrastructure needs? Okay. All right. DPW refuse collection submitted 3 projects for review this year, and their facilities are located at the city landfill on North Division Street. Their buildings are well over 60 years old, require roofing, flooring, locker room replacement, fencing to help secure the facility, and updated signage. And this investment total is nearly $1.3 million. At this time, the solid waste fund, it's an enterprise fund, and Mary Beth will talk a little bit more about that this evening, and has a lot of long-term debt. So while we have made recent changes to the refuse collection fee, this has allowed for a slight profit in the fund, just enough though to cover the replacement of the packers that we recently approved for leases, but not sufficient enough funds to make large capital investment. So additional review of the debt load and the refuse collection fees should be looked at for this coming fiscal year to hopefully better position this fund for future investment. City and water and sewer departments continue to make large investments in their filtration, distribution, collection, and treatment system facilities within the city. In particular, the water department is focused on completing their engineering report for the Franklin Street water transmission main and reservoir project. This will help position the city for future funding from New York State EFC. City staff is also continuing to work hard on continuing and supporting improvements at the wastewater treatment plant regarding the biosolids and the ORF projects. Due to the large-scale investment at the plant currently, city staff is recommending that we hold off one more year for future sewer debt being issued within the sewer fund. This is always one of my favorite slides. So here's a little history on the city's capital debt service. This is looking just at our short-term debt, not our long-term. So overall, things are still looking very positive. Over the last 5 years, the city took advantage of near 1% interest rates and accomplished very large general fund capital projects in fiscal year 21 and 22. Those included the new fire department headquarters and bridge projects on North Division and State Street, as well as paving South Street. However, interest rates spiked in fiscal year 22 through 24, and the city reduced its general fund borrowing. In fiscal year 23, the city was faced with inflationary costs for the biosolids and wastewater treatment plant project, as you can see there. And then the project, which was initially estimated $36 million, quickly grew to over $84 million for construction costs. So the city partnered with the EFC, took advantage of favorable financing, and we were able to reduce the band issuance from $67.4 million down to $32.9 million. We continue to work hard at the city's band issuance. In last fiscal year, 25, we continue to reduce that to $22.5 million in August. And then based on tonight's discussion and projects, we will be looking at a potential issuance of about $27 million. With the current CIP project load and fiscal picture in mind, there's several things that capital planning staff, myself, are using and trying to prioritize here to better position the city. So those include supporting and completing our existing capital projects first. So these are projects that we either have grant agreements with or agreements with state or federal agencies. We will try to continue to maximize our federal, state, and local grant dollars where we can. Work with our city departments to explore additional funding opportunities through the New York State CFA program and other grant programs. And then continue to provide timely reports to those agencies that fund us regarding our MWBE and compliance requirements, project progress reports, and reimbursements for those fundings. And then in a nutshell, that's roughly what we're looking at for fiscal year 26-27. So general fund total requests, water fund, sewer fund, which is mostly the biosolids project, and solid waste funds requests for a total fiscal year request of about $42.8 million. So those are the proposed new bans and borrowing this year. That is purely for cash flow. So that would be, we would only borrow the minimum we need for Lake Avenue Bridge, and then we would need to borrow the full HVAC, because obviously we would like that system up and operating in time for winter for next fall. Operating funds mostly are matching funds for any grant-related programs, and grants right now are really helping to carry the load with these large projects. And the lease amount there represents the body-worn camera initial payment for a 5-year lease, and then what we would need to put into the court project. And that wraps up this year's capital plan presentation. Over the next couple weeks, I normally fine-tune between comments from council, comments from departments, and hope to bring this back to you for adoption here in mid-April. So thank you, and any questions?
Questions for Ms. Sullivan? Councilor Diego.
So we're looking at, as far as projects that are going to require bonding, that's going to be the HVAC system and then the Lake Ave Bridge, nothing else?
We would always like to do more, but in terms of watching our Moody's rating and balancing our debt loads, I think those are probably reasonable requests this year. Considering we haven't borrowed for the last 3 years, we've done a really good job reducing our short-term borrowing. And, you know, as engineering had just said, our saving grace really has been those CHIPS funds. They've helped us to invest in our roads and our fleet without having to do borrowing.
Do we have a debt limit projection over the next 5 years?
That's a great question. So that I would need to look at, we do, but we haven't revised the citywide financial plan in a few years, and that's something that I know is on our finance department to-do list. So hopefully we can get to that this year, is the goal. Yes.
I think that probably, and I'm assuming that's what's happening anyways, this capital improvement plan, we should be aligning that with our 5-year budget plan as well. Obviously,
Yes.
the situation financially is tough right now, so they got to go hand in hand so we can decide, you know, what the funding's available and what we can actually afford.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah. In an ideal world, yes, you would be able to have your 5-year financial plan and say, yes, here's what we can afford for investments. At the moment, I'm trying to bring you just the critical emergency needs for each of the funds. Obviously, in sewer, getting the plant project completed is top priority, and protecting, you know, our structures from leaks and damages is always second.
Right. Yeah, that leads me to my last question. When you're talking about roofs and leaks, I didn't see anything listed in the pamphlet there as far as, I know the police station's had a problem. I know the DPW's been trying to clear out the I think the sewer lines or something are collapsed from what I understand.
Oh.
They had a plumber there, and
Mm-hmm.
we just can't have those guys working with it, leaking inside their offices and stuff. That's something, I didn't see the money annotated. I know there was building maintenance money for that at one point, but obviously we were in a tough budget year. If that ends up getting cut, that's something that we definitely are gonna have to add in here somewhere. You can't have them sitting in the offices
Agreed.
with water leaking
Yep.
in there.
One of the leaks, I think, was from one of the HVAC units. Chief's nodding his head, and I do think that there is a roof leak that is, you know, occurring on high-intensity storms. So what will normally happen, Counselor, so we'll come back with some fine-tuning with the plan, let council vote, we go through the budget process, and once I can get some better cost estimates, normally we'll bring back a general fund bond ordinance for council to review, and we can talk about fine-tuning borrowing ceilings at that point.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilor Cuddy?
Yes, you mentioned that the citywide financial plan is needed. Is there a time frame in which we could expect that to happen?
That was definitely on our goal list for this year. Unfortunately, we're not there right now. We've been focusing a lot on the budget, obviously, and that kind of thing, so we haven't gotten there. it literally sits on my desktop face front every day. So the goal would be to work with Christina, just to kind of add in the reason why we talked about the HVAC and being able to bond for it is I looked at the 5-year projection. So typically we would keep the ban for 5 years and then convert to long-term debt. In this year's budget, our long-term debt principal payments went down by $300,000. In 5 years, it will drop again. So if we do a short-term borrowing right now for HVAC, it won't convert into long-term debt until our borrowing goes down again. So that's kind of the intent. But putting that together in a plan is important, and we recognize that. So we're going to work to get that done this year.
I know the priority is the budget, and I think that that's key, but like, so after the budget is passed, what would be the time frame for us to get this?
The problem, the challenge, right, is that we go right from the budget adoption into audit preparation because they start at the end of June with their planning work. So it ends up being a little bit challenging. So the opportunity for me is typically after the audit starts, which would be in the fall. You know, they would start work in the fall. So that's really the sweet spot for me of not having some major project on my desk. And we'll hope to do that. Hopefully, you know, obviously we're also going to be doing the tax collection change as far as software goes at that time. So hopefully the treasurer's office will be able to keep up with that so I can focus on financial planning.
Okay. I just think like, yes, I understand, obviously all of those are important, but for planning purposes.
Absolutely,
especially now,
absolutely, yep.
You know,
Yep,
just.
we have it on the top of our list. If you go on my whiteboard, it's number 1 on there.
So we get, all right, so budget, audit,
Financial plan.
financial plan. Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Ms. Selvig, when do we typically hear back on the congressional requests? I ask because I ran into Josh Perlman from Senator Schumer's office. He did receive them, and he said they are
Excellent.
reviewing them. When do we typically hear back on those?
With this new administration, that's going to be hard to say, but normally, like, they will ask for more information if the subcommittee is favorable to our requests. So for the public, for the mayor's question is regarding, so each year our congressional representatives will ask the city for a list of project requests that match the bills and funding streams that they would present to their subcommittees at the federal level. Not every project fits nicely into their square box for federal bills. So this year we were able to look at Department of Justice for future needs for the radios within the police department. There was some Army Corps of Engineer funding out there for dam and operating and maintenance improvements, and we're looking at that for Mill Street Dam, which is in the capital plan. And then we were looking at Veterans Memorial Park as well. So normally, if they want more information, it normally comes back April, May, and then normally by June I find out if we were on the list or not. So it's recommended projects.
Okay, very good. All set, council? Thank you, Ms. Selvig.
Yes, thank you.
Up next, we have our preliminary budget presentation for fiscal year 2026-2027. Will be presented by City Manager Jenny Haynes, our Comptroller, Ms. Mary Beth Leeson.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we present the 2026-2027 budget, I'd like to highlight the city's efforts related to the budget over the past several years. We've utilized all resources available, maintained city services at a high level, and very importantly, fully maintained our workforce. Even through COVID, when many municipalities furloughed their employees, our employees never missed a paycheck. After that, the city continued to maintain all services and employees. During the budget process last year, very hard decisions were made and operating budgets cut to the bone, again with the goal of keeping our workforce intact. We are a service organization and need our people to provide our services. Unfortunately, the resources the city has utilized in the recent past to preserve services and workforce, including the American Rescue Plan Act funding, are no longer available to us. The last $1 million of ARPA funding was utilized to balance the current fiscal year's budget. As presented in January, that $1 million plus $2 million more from the city's fund balance will be needed to get us through this fiscal year. That will decrease the fund balance to a level that will not allow us to utilize it for the 2026-2027 budget. At the same time, costs have risen, both in our operating expenses like electricity and in our most valuable resources, our employees. Health insurance and pension costs, which are necessary to provide good jobs. So now even tougher decisions need to be made, decisions that are gut-wrenching because we can no longer avoid impacting our employees in order to balance the services we provide with what taxpayers can afford. Our employees are still our priority, and we are working to communicate with honesty, transparency, and respect as we navigate this budget process together. That was my intention in sending an email to all city employees last week. We have already done a good deal of work on the budget, and I want to thank our city comptroller, Mary Beth Leeson, for organizing that effort, and our department head supervisors and all city employees who have spoken into this budget process so far. So we'll jump into it. General fund is going to be the most talked about, but we will be presenting all funds tonight. Department requests for the 2026-2027 budget in the general fund total $52.6 million. Revenue is currently budgeted at $47.6 million, which includes an increase to property taxes of the New York State tax cap allowable 2% increase, which equates to a 4.72% rate increase based on New York State allowable growth factor and adjustments. Mary Beth will give some more detail on that. How 2% equals 4.72, only New York State knows. The general fund, based on the above information, has a gap of $4.9 million. So just to recap, that $4.9 million budget gap already includes budgeting a 4.72% tax increase. We're anticipating the unassigned fund balance on June 30th will be approximately $870,000. Again, that is dangerously low and will not make it available to us for 2026-2027. The current fund balance policy would require fund balance to be at a minimum of $2.85 million. After some discussion, we've prepared for your review and consideration 3 budget scenarios. Department heads have been given direction to present 3 scenarios. The first, budgeted funds as requested. If the budget was balanced with property taxes alone, this would require an increase in the tax levy of 22.7%. That's on top of the 4.72%, equal to almost 28% rate increase, tax rate increase. Second scenario, departments reduce budgets by 11%, which would allow for a balanced budget and not exceed the 2% property tax cap, which again equals a 4.72% tax rate increase. The third scenario, departments will reduce their budgets by 8%, which would assume an increase to revenue largely by an increase to the property tax cap. If this revenue were generated solely by taxes, the increase to the levy would be an additional 7% above the 2% tax cap, which would equate to a 12% increase in the tax rate. So again, first scenario, full budget requests. Second scenario, an 11% reduction in budgets. And the third scenario, an 8% reduction in budgets. So as we go through the next few weeks with departments, their presentations will follow that same structure. And I'll have Mary Beth get into the details on these things.
So I'm going to start tonight just sharing with you kind of the calculation that New York State uses to calculate that tax cap so that people understand where those numbers are coming from. So if you look here, our tax levy for the June 2025 levy was $14.9 million. New York State assigns a growth factor to your community. It's a tax-based growth factor, so ours was 1.0033. which adjusts the levy. We then have to adjust for pilots. We had pilot agreements with payments due of $616,000 for the current fiscal year. Next year, 2 of those pilots will drop off. That allows us to increase our levy by more because essentially those entities that were not part of the levy in the past are now part of the levy and will be participating in paying those taxes. And then we get a credit for police and fire retirement system, which brings us to the tax cap number of $15,698,000. This schedule is something that you're fairly familiar with seeing. So this would be if we did balance the budget with just property taxes alone. You'll see that that has the 27.46% increase. The difference in the way I'm presenting this year, because of the revaluation of properties, typically we would compare the average house at the bottom. The average house is no longer 127, it's now 191, and that kind of skews the calculation. So we have different numbers for each year just because of that. The other thing that we should always keep in mind too is the total city taxable value isn't final yet, so that could change. So when we look at the tax rate per thousand, that could be different depending on what we end up with total taxable value. Just sharing with council the breakdown of the general fund budget and what we spend it on. We've talked about this a lot. It's mostly people, so mostly salary and fringe. You'll see that that contractual expense is pretty small. That's really the only place that department heads have true flexibility with, and a lot of that is even committed to ahead of time. So it's really about the people doing the services. This is just to give council an idea of how we spend the money based on our services. So you'll see a lot of that is blue, that's public safety. This is based on how New York State categorizes public safety. So I do want to say that street lighting is considered public safety for this purpose because that's what New York State says, and I would have never put it there, but that's how they do it. So police, fire, ambulance, code enforcement, and street lighting is in that blue category. So definitely a lot of that. We obviously have DPW and planning services. There's obviously administration in there, but just to give you an idea of how we break down your dollar. So that was scenario one. Scenario two would be if we decide to just balance the budget by making cuts. So how did I get to the 11%? So this is the property tax cap of 2%, which as we've talked about would be 4.72. That generates additional property tax revenue of $522,000. This year we're using 5% as the amount of the tax levy that we won't collect. That would be, bills that people don't pay and we end up foreclosing on. Many times when we sell a property for foreclosure, we're not getting the full amount of outstanding taxes back. So we have to reserve for that. The other part of it is in that $52.5 million budget, $7.4 million of it we can't touch. It's either debt payments or it's retirement payments. So the retirement system, in April, I will get our final projected number. We pay that in December, but it's on last year's salaries, so that number can't be adjusted at this point. So then I knew how much we could actually adjust, and that's how I got to the 11%. So this is basically what the tax would look like if we went to the tax cap using the 2%, getting to the 4.72 based on the state calculation, and the impact to our taxpayers for the average house in the city of Auburn. So in this scenario, each department head has submitted back to the city manager and myself recommendations of cuts to balance the budget with that 11% cut. In that cut, it would eliminate 20 part-time positions, reduce full-time positions down to lower hours for 4 employees. We would eliminate 32 full-time positions. Currently, the city has 15 vacant positions. One of those positions is currently in this budget. The third scenario was to try to find a middle of the road proposal. So in this proposal, we would have the 4.72% increase in property taxes to the cap, an additional 7% added onto that. That would increase our tax revenue by 1.5 million. It would give us, we would have to increase that allowance for uncollectible taxes. We still have that amount that we can't adjust, which then dictates that each department, if we cut flat across, every department would have to reduce their budget by 8.41%. This slide just shows you the impact of 11.72% tax increase and how much the average home would pay additionally in taxes. Yeah.
Visually impaired, can that number be audible, basically?
Sure. So the average home would go up $204.63 in taxes if we raised taxes by 11.72%. This slide is to share with council what each percentage of additional tax levy would provide to the city. So accounting for the actual tax levy less the uncollectible amount and what would actually end up increasing as far as city revenue. And basically each 1% is $142,413. So depending on where you want to fall, if you decide to go over the cap, each 1% would give you $142,000. So in this scenario with the 8.4% cuts, again, departments did reduce some contractual and equipment requests. This also eliminates 20 part-time positions, reduces 4 full-time employees in the number of hours that they will work, eliminates 22 full-time positions. We still would have 14 of the 15 vacancies held vacant in this budget. We wanted to talk a little bit about what's driving the general fund budget. I did have a phone call about 5 minutes before I walked into this meeting tonight. Our insurance carriers for both liability and workers' comp had asked us to budget a 10% increase for insurance coverage. Our liability quote at this point has come back. It's come back at 10.82% increase. Our workers' compensation quote came back at 15.3% increase. She has asked them to do better. So I'm still not going to put that 15.3% increase in yet until I get final. Our salary budget right now is down 2%. Obviously, we have those 15 vacancies. So in the budget, in the original requested budget, we did add 2 of those back. That still has our total salaries budget down 2% because senior management is not budgeted for any increase other than step increases. Fire, ambulance, and police are currently in negotiations, and so we did not budget anything other than step increases for them either. So obviously those numbers could change if the factors change. Health insurance total budget is up 15% from last year. It was up 38% the year before. I just want to clarify there a little bit. Because of the timing of the way our health insurance premiums are assigned, we don't know when we're assigning the new rates take effect for January 1st. We don't know when we're doing this budget what January 1st is going to bring. So if last year's budget was too low, I almost have to overcompensate in the next year to raise the budget to cover the increase I didn't expect. Electric cost is up about 20% from 23-24. Gas cost is up about 43%. Just the electricity related to street lighting alone, we're up to a budget of $510,000. That was $420,000 in 23-24. Also on the retirement system side, again, we're trying to refine that a little bit, so we've been really digging into what's been reported as far as salaries to the state retirement system so that we can better project these numbers. We're experiencing significant increases there. The projection for ERS, I had to budget a 17% increase to the employee retirement system and a 16% increase to the police retirement system. So that's about 1.1 million in increase just there. Compared to 23-24, retirement expense in the general fund increased from 4.6 million to 7.1. So just in a couple of years. Again, the update will happen again in the state retirement system in April, so we should be able to refine those numbers. As I mentioned, I just got liability and workers' comp before I walked in here, so we'll work to refine that. We currently have contingency budgeted for $150,000. We are anticipating that that is not enough, so I should probably increase that number. We also are including the $1.2 million temporary increase to AIM. Obviously, that hasn't been voted on at the state level, so that could change as well. Do you want me to stop on general fund, or do you want me to keep going?
Councilman, do you want her to keep going?
Okay. Okay, solid waste. At this time, we're not recommending increase in rates. Currently, the fund is showing a profit of $259,000. I just want to reiterate what Ms. Selvig said in her presentation. This being an enterprise fund is different. Long-term debt payments are not budgeted as an expense in enterprise funds. So that will be an additional draw on cash. So although that shows a profit, I need that money to make the debt payments. So this budget is incredibly tight, but at this time, I'm not recommending an increase. In this department, the contractual expense is significant. That would be our disposal costs hauling it to Ontario County landfill. That's the biggest expense in contractual there. As we just talked about, debt management and cash management is going to be important. Prior to increasing the refuse collection fee on the tax bill last year, this fund was borrowing cash from the general fund. We need to continue to make sure that this fund can sustain itself, watching the debt load and making sure that we're able to manage those costs is going to be important going forward. We also are looking at some processes to see if we can create some efficiency and balance out these costs. So if there's things that we can do in that fund to be a little bit more efficient and save some costs, we're going to try to do that as well. In the power utility fund, that would be your hydroelectric facilities. This fund consistently is dependent on general water, sewer, and landfill. This fund currently sits at over $3 million in the hole. That is subsidized. At year end, I have to charge back each of the funds their share of the electric usage that's generated by this fund. Essentially, this fund is half of an employee. There is some overtime where other employees come in and help, but essentially half of an employee. In this current year, we've had a slow start. We're always very weather dependent on production, so this year's performance was not as good, at least to date, as we had hoped. They're picking up speed, though. I think they're doing great now, so hopefully we make it by the end of the year. The cogen was established in 2007. We will be continuing to pay that debt until 2038. That's when the last payment will be made. This breakdown, I think, tells the whole story. This fund is 54% debt payments, which is a significant challenge to overcome. So until we can pay down that debt, we're probably going to be talking about the same thing.
You said 2038 is the last payment on that cogen?
February 15th, 2038. We're all throwing a party.
What's the payment a year on that?
I think I think it was like 300,000 principal and like 100,000 in interest a year. So for water, this would be the pump station, filtration plant, distribution, and our wholesale contracts. We are currently recommending a 2% rate increase for this fund. Both water and sewer do a rate study on a fairly regular basis. This would be consistent with that plan. You know, with the council's support over the years, we've been able to maintain financial stability in these funds. It's going to be dependent on continuing forward with those rate increases per the study. We're trying to manage costs to match up with that rate increase. Mr. Jensen and I met the other day and tried to work through so that we can balance those funds. We're not anticipating using any of the $4.1 million fund balance in the water fund. As Ms. Selvig talked about, there's going to be capital projects going forward. It's important for this fund to have stable fund balance so that they have cash flow. Many of these projects require cash flow ahead, and it's important for water and sewer to have strong cash position. Currently, there's one unbudgeted vacant position in this fund. Salaries have increased 7.6% from 24-25. Retirement has increased 58% over 24-25. This is largely due to increased contribution rates. Luckily for water and sewer, but also kind of painful for water and sewer, they have some of our most experienced employees. Contribution rate is higher the longer you stay. So unfortunately for them, they pay a little bit more in retirement, but they have some very experienced, talented staff. As far as gas costs, they're also feeling the pain from utilities, 23.5% increase. Liability insurance for water is up 17.3%. Our debt payment requirements have decreased. I think that's going to be important as we go forward and look at things like the Franklin Street water main. That's probably going to have to be a bonded project, and so managing the debt load in this fund again is important. Again, the water fund, there are significant contractual expenses related to this fund as well. Equipment is important. So the split is definitely very different from general fund for water. In the sewer fund, we're also recommending the 2% rate increase, aligning with our rate study model. We're anticipating starting to recognize some savings with regard to the biosolids project. As this project starts to come to close, we're hoping to save some money. This year's budget does include our first debt payment to EFC. We are anticipating ending the year at approximately $2.6 million of fund balance. Of that, though, we're going to have that non-spendable amount, which is as a result of the cogen facility. Cash flow is a little bit tight in the sewer fund at this time. They take a big burden because they are a large electricity user. In this budget, sewer salaries have increased 28%. We have budgeted for a chief operator position. We now have potential candidates for that. There is some cost savings on the contractual side. We've been paying an outside consultant to provide those services. We are anticipating that that contract can be lowered and we could hire a position in-house. Again, retirement contributions have increased 50% over 24-25. Health insurance costs have increased 27%. We're now starting to pick up the debt payments for this new biosolids project. So we had that year of low debt payments. Now we're starting to turn back the other way. And electricity cost is up in this budget as well.
Ms. Leeson?
Yeah.
In terms of debt payments on the sewer fund, you mentioned the biosolids project, and we'll be picking up those debt payments, but just for everybody's knowledge, there were debt payments that dropped off in the 90s. And that's why we timed this project.
Exactly. So it's kind of like the same thing that I was talking about with the general fund and timing those borrowings. The same thing happened here. So basically it worked as designed. We had the year where now we're going to recognize cost savings on our new process, but we're going to pick up the debt payment. And last year we didn't have, our debt payments were low last year because we didn't have any related to that.
I know Mr. Jensen will present on his budget in a few weeks, and maybe this is a question for then, but in what you're forecasting for sewer fund, part of the idea of doing the biosolids project is we will reduce our hauling fees for the sludge. Have those numbers been factored into this budget, or is
Yes.
that to come? Okay.
I think, and Mr. Jensen can definitely speak more to that. I don't think that we're anticipating the full savings this year, but a part of that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Again, breakdown of the sewer fund. Again, not as many people as general. The contractual expenses, things like sludge hauling and that kind of thing, would fall in the contractual expense. This year, based on the audit recommendations, we broke out enterprise recreation. This would be for Casey and Falcon Park. This fund is going to be a challenge for council and for myself to figure out the best way to move forward. So we are budgeting, what we've done is moved both revenue and expense for those two functions into a separate fund. It has to be cost neutral. Enterprise funds have to support themselves. Unfortunately, not all of these functions are self-sustaining. So I'm taking the position, and again, council can speak into this, that part of Casey Park is just a park. There's softball fields, there's a walking path, there's pavilion there, there's skate park. Those are just park functions, and the general fund needs to support that park function. Pool and ice should be self-sustaining in theory, as well as Falcon Park. So we're working to refine our revenue and be able to charge what it actually costs for those services, so that they can be self-sustaining. But I am budgeting a $70,000 contribution from the general fund to enterprise recreation to help offset the cost of the actual park.
Are you set on a number for, say, the ice rink, what it costs an hour to operate it when you factor in utilities and staffing?
So I worked with DPW to go over their staffing plan for both Casey and Falcon. We've identified revenue budgets as it currently stands. So basically, I just spoke with Mr. Talbot today. We're going to meet on Monday to go through what the revenue budget is, how much of the staff time should be broken out between each function. Now that I know what people are there and how much it costs, I need to break it out between each function. We've identified utility costs for pool, utility costs for ice, contractual expenses related to that, chemicals, etc. So we've kind of got all of the contractual stuff. I just need to break hours down between those functions. We are meeting with some of the users of these facilities in the coming week, and I want to make sure that we have it pinned down exactly how much it really costs per hour.
And that was my second question regarding those who use it. I know one of the criticism, and it's a fair one, is that we don't pass our budget till June, and school district has already passed their budget, and then a month later we're saying, hey, by the way, this is what ice is going to cost an hour, but they've already budgeted a smaller amount usually because that's what the rate was. So I just want to make sure we're communicating clearly to all users what the expectation is going to be so that we're fair to them.
Yeah, so we have a meeting with the school district on Tuesday of next week to discuss ICE, Falcon Park, and the SRO contract. So we'll be working through terms of those agreements next week so that the city manager can come back to council with some format of that. But ultimately trying to capture the right costs and make sure we're all on the same page. And I know that Mr. Rhodes is also talking to other people who use the facility and making sure that they're also paying fair share.
All right, very good. Thank you.
So challenges in this fund, you know, like I mentioned, we've established a new staffing pattern there. Utility costs are significant. Between pool and ice, it's pretty costly. And I was actually even surprised at Falcon Park. That's pretty costly as well as far as utilities go. So as I mentioned, I identified some costs, things like mowing, field maintenance, tree maintenance, etc., that are just park related, and that's really what I'm trying to cover by the transfer from the general fund. Very similar to a general fund, this is significantly they rely on the people there. There are contractual expenses, obviously, chemicals, lifeguards, rink guards, all of that stuff. There's contractual expenses with, but this fund is also very dependent on people. And then we just wanted to share with you the schedule of presentations. So departments will be presenting over the next few weeks. I will be back on the 23rd to present revenues and fee schedule to council as well. Questions?
Are there any questions for Ms. Leeson at this time? Councilor Diego.
Yeah, a few weeks ago when we did the revenue for the year, we were way off, and I had asked about it then. I'm assuming this year we're going to go off of what we actually took in this year, and we're not going to overestimate and get caught in the same position that we were last year. That's
Correct.
something that I would probably personally like to look at if we could.
Yep.
Whatever we're going to bring in this year, I'd rather have a little bit extra next year than fall short again. What was it? We ended up using a few extra million out of the general fund to
Correct. It was
balance
like
that out.
an extra 1.3 million on the revenue side. I feel like the estimates, and there's been, I think, 4 sets of eyes on it so far. But the revenue estimates, we really wanted to be fairly conservative in. If we get more, that's a bonus, but you know, we want to be conservative. So my intent is I've been trying to find a good report in our software that would be easy for you all to look at with detail. I think I finally hit the jackpot, so I'm going to try to start sending out some reports for you to look at.
Yeah, and I was, as far as the budget this year, and I was speaking on it a little while ago too, we should be setting ourselves up for the next X amount of years too. We don't want to end up making these cuts in taxes and whatever we end up doing and being in the exact same position next year. You're saying that there wasn't going to be any fund balance even next year again with all these cuts. It almost seems like we're trying to get this done in 1 year, but it's not making any progress. I just don't want to sit here next year and tell the people, hey, this is what we're going to have to do again. Is that something we can look at to make sure that this is going to push us in the right direction?
So I think, you know, what I think I've said since I've walked in the door is we need to make meaningful changes. Unfortunately, I think there's, you know, factors that we're fighting that are not easy to win, right? Like, you know, your utility costs are driving so many other costs as well. And so unfortunately, you know, we've had some cost escalation that's not typical. And 2% of a third of your budget doesn't really offset a 10% increase to utilities or a 10% increase to liability insurance. It's very difficult to do that. I think, you know, without being political, it's hard with the AIM funding being flat and not being able to have, you know, trying to balance it with property taxes isn't necessarily what I would consider the best answer. This is an incredibly painful conversation. Our workforce works incredibly hard, and the services are things that our taxpayers rely on. So it's going to be a very difficult thing, and to say that we're going to fix this in one budget year, we're not going to fix that this year. I mean, I don't have any glorious hope that it's going to be easy to fix. We have some things that we have to change the way we do business, and we recognize that, and those are the hard decisions that you all have to make. As we go forward, you know, we try to manage costs where we can, which is why I'm so focused on debt load and things like that, because if we continue to borrow for too much, that's going to push our budget the wrong way, and we really need to focus on managing the costs that we can, We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and that's something that we could look at as well if we have to. There's different ways to go about making these 11, 8%, whatever decision comes comes across. But on the same token, and I'm not saying the department heads aren't doing this, what I am saying is if it comes down to it, before anybody loses their job per se, then we could start the budget. You could present a budget with just the mandates only for the city and have them add back in what they need. It's very easy for department heads, and it's nothing personal at all, but it's easy to justify when you already have somebody there, or this person does this, or we always spend money on that. It's a lot more difficult when you start flat and say, oh, I'm gonna need this, and make them justify what that position or what that cost is, no matter what it is. It's just another way to look at it. But to end it, it's for me, it's more, we've spoken, the term's been said many times, fair and equitable. I just want to clarify a little bit on my thought pattern on it. They're not the same. That's not the same. Cutting, say we cut 11% from one entity, it doesn't mean that we can cut 11% from the other one. You may have an excess of workers, you could call it that, or funds. It all comes down to paying for the services. And if you change one thing or another, it's got to be not fair, it's got to be equitable. Cutting 10 people from one place doesn't mean you can cut 10 from the other. Cutting 5 from here doesn't mean you can cut 5 from there. That's going to be the tough decision. That's going to be before the council and the mayor, because it's not across the board. Let's just go ahead and cut everybody 11%. It doesn't work that way as far as I'm concerned, because some services, unfortunately, are more important than others. They're all vital to the city, but you have to look at the numbers of everybody, of every department, and whether it's sitting here in City Hall or it's, sitting downtown. It is what it is. That's just my thought on it. It's not the same, and we got to make sure that we do the right thing so the help's there for the services we're going to provide and what we're going to charge, because the city pays quite a bit of taxes and fees. They got to get what they're paying for. We got to make sure that we're not just trying to go across the board to make sure that that's the way it is.
Are you all set, Councilor?
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Mary Beth, throughout the presentation, you talk about the electric and the gas. Just a point of clarification question. Does the gas, is that natural gas or is that the fuel for vehicles?
It's natural gas.
So it's not the fuel for vehicles?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Leeson, thank you. I know you
You're
put
welcome.
a tremendous amount of work into this, as have the department heads. Not an easy conversation, but I think a necessary one. And I think it's important to put these numbers for all of us to see, including the public and our workforce. I want to piggyback off of what Ms. Haynes started with. I do have some prepared comments, and while I speak for myself, when I say this, I do think that the spirit of this goes throughout the council. I can't speak for the rest of the council, but in my conversations with my colleagues, I think that this picks up the tone of where we all are at this point in time. As we begin the process for the 2026-2027 budget, I want to speak candidly about the challenges we face and the principles that must guide our decisions in the weeks ahead. While tonight was the first step in a 10-week public process, the reality is planning for this budget started months ago when the city manager clearly communicated to city staff and to the council that there were very real fiscal challenges ahead of us. She took the crucial step of directing a spending freeze and scrutinized every expenditure. This was in addition to the collective decision to leave several positions vacant in last year's budget. Additionally, operational budgets were once again cut in last year's budget to the extent that they could be, while still enabling departments to provide services. Unfortunately, as we've seen tonight, these steps were not enough to offset rising costs across the board. In my summation, this is a pivotal moment for our city. Like other cities across New York State, Auburn is navigating rising costs, aging infrastructure, and increasing demands for essential services. The city of Watertown last year faced an 18% tax increase. The city of Buffalo has just proposed a 25% tax increase. The City of Albany has directed their department heads to prepare 5, 10, and 15% spending reduction plans across the board. I share this to underscore that this is a problem not unique to Auburn. At the same time, our constituents, like everyone across this country, is facing a very real affordability crisis. Families, senior citizens, and small businesses continue to grapple with the pressure of higher living expenses, from out-of-control health, car, and homeowners insurance premiums to runaway NICEAG bills. Costs continue to rise. Every week, a trip to the grocery store results in higher costs, and now we have gas prices daily rising, up $1 in less than a month with no end in sight. Our city staff is tasked with providing essential services that every resident relies on, and across the board, these services are performed by a professional and skilled workforce that cares about the citizens they serve. We saw in the comptroller's budget presentation some of the main factors that are contributing to our current situation. Many of those costs are directly related to the people who are committed to providing these services. Unfortunately, those costs are costs that we locally have little control over. I know that talking about this is uncomfortable for everyone involved because of the fact we are talking about people, hardworking, professional, dedicated people, many of whom have families. This conversation on this floor tonight is not intended to slight them. It's not intended to treat them as pawns in a process. We are not blaming them. This conversation is being had because it is necessary, because we are at a point where we have no choice but to have this conversation. The additional vital factor contributing to this situation was not discussed tonight, but has been discussed exhaustively over the past decade. That is AIM funding. AIM is unrestricted state funding to municipalities, which is essentially our money coming back to us. We send our sales tax, we send our income tax to Albany. That is our money coming back to us, and it has remained flat for 16 years. After a decades-long effort to lobby our state leaders to properly fund this program, they seem to have finally, at least partially, have heard us. There have been additional allocations over the past couple of years, and there is a proposed bump again this year. However, these bumps are in a temporary category, and we cannot budget relying on these for the following year. If the additional bump is included in this year's budget, and that's an if, we won't know until the budget is passed, that basically makes up for a health insurance increase this year. These lobbying efforts will continue. I have spoken with Senator May's office along with the city clerk. Over the past week, I've shared our very grim circumstances with them. They are familiar with ours. They're familiar with those circumstances across the state. I personally, and in my lobbying efforts, want to know why the governor sees it necessary to include direct additional payments of $40 million to Buffalo and $10 million each to Syracuse, Rochester, and Yonkers, while small cities like Auburn are left to fend for themselves. Every member of this community, every member of our workforce should be as outraged as we are, and I encourage them to contact the governor's office between now and April 1st. We will have to collectively decide the level of service that the people of Auburn can realistically afford. This is not a decision that any one person can make. This is not a decision that the city council alone or the city manager can make. It is a decision that will have to be made collectively in partnership with our department heads. I don't know, no one knows at this time what the result will be. What I do know is that I, along with my colleagues, are committed to working through this process in a dignified and respectful manner, understanding that 350 people's livelihoods are under the microscope. That happens every budget season. The budget's the most important thing we do as a council. It's also every year, even in the best of circumstances, the most uncomfortable thing, because people's lives are scrutinized in a very public forum. And I just say that because I want the workforce to know that I understand that we respect you, and we are going to try to get this done in a fair and equitable manner. With that, I have nothing more to add to council. Anything else? Ms. Leeson, thank you.
Thank you.
Other business from the council? Councilor Diego?
Yeah, just on a lighter note, one of the constituents had reached out, and I thought it was a great idea. Thought I'd present it tonight. He was talking about Falcon Park, and he had did an article in the paper a week ago or so about guys that played professional baseball out of Auburn, and he was requesting a picture of Timmy LaCastro and Kevin Polkovich placed on the Wall of Fame down there. I thought it was a great idea. It's not, obviously it's not going to cost us anything, but be a nice tribute to guys that actually played a professional sport, you know, and put it down there with the rest of them.
Very good, thank you. Any other business from the council? Ms. Haynes, I understand you have a request for executive session this evening.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. one item related to the employment history of a particular individual.
Very good. Do we have a motion for executive session? Counselor Cuddy, seconded by Counselor Overstreet Wilson. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Executive session for 7:04 PM. Counselor Diego?
Yes.
Counselor Overstreet Wilson?
Yes.
Counselor Cuddy?
Yes.
Mayor Gentine.
Aye. We'll be in recess for executive session.
Tom, have a good one. Joe, have a good one.
Still got it?
Yes, ma'am, I am.